Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. Kale Reiner wiped the glass with practiced precision, watching the amber reflections dance across its surface. Another day in The Last Breath, the roughest bar on Calyx 9. His eyes never settled on one spot for too long, constantly scanning the room while maintaining the appearance of disinterest. The bar buzzed with the usual crowd, imperial officers slumming for exotic thrills, bounty hunters between jobs, smugglers with cargo better left unmentioned. Kale knew them all without knowing any of them, a careful balancing act he'd perfected over 3 years. Another, growled a Vexian trader, his iridescent scales flashing irritation as he slammed down an empty glass. Kale nodded once, refilling without comment. The fewer words exchanged, the fewer opportunities to reveal anything worth remembering. A fight broke out in the corner, some argument over contraband routes. Kale watched, unmoved, as 2 Draxian mercenaries smashed each other into tables. Everyone expected him to intervene. He didn't, not until the smaller Draxian pulled a plasma cutter. "No weapons," Kale said, his voice carrying across the bar without shouting. Something in his tone made both mercenaries freeze. The larger Draxian sneered. "Or what, barkeep?" Kale set down the glass he was polishing. "Or I'll remove it, along with whatever appendage is holding it." The stillness that followed felt electric. The mercenary's hand trembled slightly before he lowered the weapon. Both fighters skulked away, muttering but compliant. "Nice one," commented Jax, the Torellian cook. "Thought you'd have to break someone again." "Day's still young," Kale replied, returning to his glasses. Through the smudged viewport behind the bar, Calyx 9's permanent sunset painted the station's central plaza in harsh oranges and reds. The space station hung in perpetual twilight, orbiting a dying star that the locals called the Smoldering Eye. Like the station itself, once grand, now decaying but still dangerous. Imperial banners snapped in the artificial breeze, marking the station as conquered territory. 3 years since the Empire had pacified this sector, implementing their vision of order across a dozen star systems. The indigenous populations had been integrated, a pretty word for subjugation. Kale's hands worked mechanically while his mind drifted. Sometimes he wondered if anyone noticed how he never seemed to blink when Imperial patrols passed by, how his breathing changed when their communications crackled over public channels. Little tells that something more complicated existed behind his carefully constructed facade of indifference. "Ceremonies today," Jax mentioned casually, chopping some unidentifiable meat. "Annual purification festival. Gonna close early?" "No," Kale answered, perhaps too quickly. "Business as usual. Might be empty anyway. Everyone loves a good show, especially with an Islanian offender this time." Kale's rhythm faltered for just a heartbeat. "Islanian?" "Yeah, scientist type. Got caught in a romance with a human." Jax made a whistling sound through his gills. "Stupid. Everyone knows that's genetic contamination under Imperial code." "Everyone knows," Kale echoed, his voice flat. The bar emptied gradually as afternoon stretched toward evening. Announcements blared across the station's communications system, urging citizens to attend the Purification Festival, a celebration of imperial values and a reminder of natural order. When the last customer staggered out, Kale moved to the window. The plaza had transformed. A massive crowd surrounded a central platform where Imperial guards in gleaming white armor stood at attention. Above them towered a ceremonial pole adorned with the Empire's insignia. "Want company for the show?" Jax asked, untying his apron. "Stay if you want," Kale replied, not looking away from the window. "I'll handle things here." After Jax left, Kale placed his palms flat on the counter, breathing deeply. The tension he carried, always there, always contained, coiled tighter. In the reflection of a bottle, he studied his own face, unremarkable, deliberately so. Brown hair cropped close to his head, 3-day stubble, features that blended into any crowd. "Sometimes," he whispered to his reflection, "I wish someone would be stupid enough to make me angry." The crowd outside roared. Through the window, Cale saw them bringing the prisoner, a female Eslanian with skin the color of twilight violets. Her hands were bound behind her back, but she walked with her chin high, refusing to be dragged. Even from this distance, the defiance in her posture was unmistakable. The Imperial commander, resplendent in ceremonial armor, began his speech. The sound system carried his voice across the plaza and into every establishment. "Citizens of the Empire, today we witness justice for Selen Nora, formerly an honored xenobiologist, now condemned for the crime of genetic contamination. Her willful romance with a human threatened the purity of bloodlines established by imperial decree." The crowd jeered on cue. Guards dragged Selen forward and bound her wrists together. Then, with cold efficiency, they hoisted her up by a pulley system attached to the ceremonial pole, suspending her above the platform like a spectacle. Her feet dangled inches off the ground, her violet skin stark against the sterile white structure. Despite the humiliation, her eyes remained fierce, scanning the crowd not with fear, but with judgment. Something tightened in Cale's chest, a feeling he'd buried so deep he barely recognized it. Recognition, admiration, rage. Without conscious decision, he found himself moving. He placed his half-empty coffee mug on the counter, removed his apron with deliberate slowness, and walked toward the door. Outside, the ceremony continued. The Imperial commander elaborated on Selen's crimes. Each accusation met with louder jeers from the crowd. The air smelled of ozone and excitement, the collective bloodlust of people desperate to feel powerful by watching someone else's humiliation. For corrupting imperial genetic protocols, for allowing emotional attachment to override scientific duty, Selen Nora will undergo purification. Her memories will be cleansed, her emotions recalibrated, her body purged of all contaminants. Let this serve as a lesson to all who would place personal desire above imperial mandate. Guards approached with gleaming instruments, neural scramblers designed to strip identity while preserving technical knowledge. The ultimate imperial punishment, becoming a shell of yourself, reprogrammed to serve. Cale moved through the crowd like water between stones, never pushing, yet somehow always finding space. No one noticed him until he stepped into the empty circle surrounding the platform. Then, all eyes turned. "Excuse me," said a guard, hand moving to his weapon. "Return to the designated viewing area." Cale smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I have a proposition." The guard hesitated, confused by the calm statement. The Imperial commander turned, irritated by the interruption of his ceremony. "What nonsense is this?" the commander demanded. Cale addressed him directly, voice carrying across the suddenly hushed plaza. "A wager. If I defeat all your guards in 1 minute, you release the woman." Laughter rippled through the crowd, starting with the officials and spreading outward. The commander's mouth curved into an amused sneer. "You? A barkeep?" He gestured to the 12 elite guards surrounding the platform. "These are Imperial First Response soldiers trained in 17 combat forms." 59 seconds then, Cale amended, glancing at his outdated wrist chronometer. "I'm feeling generous." The commander's amusement deepened. "And if you fail, I join her." Cale nodded toward Selen, whose violet eyes had widened with confusion. "Very well. Your funeral entertainment will extend our ceremony." The commander waved a hand. "Apprehend this fool." "Wait," called Cale, raising one finger. "Official time check." He made a show of synchronizing his chronometer with the plaza's main clock. The delay heightened the theatricality, drawing more attention. Citizens pressed closer, eager for this unexpected addition to the day's entertainment. "Beginning now," Cale announced. What happened next would later be described in dozens of contradictory accounts. Some swore the barkeep moved faster than physically possible. Others claimed he barely seemed to move at all, that the guards simply fell around him as if struck by an invisible force. The first 4 guards rushed him simultaneously. Cale sidestepped the leader, gripped his armor at precise junctures, and used the guard's momentum to send him crashing into his companions. They collapsed in a tangle of white armor and curses. 3 more attacked from behind. Without looking, Cale dropped to one knee. The guards' synchronized swing missed, throwing them off balance. As they stumbled, Cale rose, his elbow connecting with one guard's helmet with enough force to crack the faceplate. The guard dropped unconscious. 43 seconds, Cale called out cheerfully. 2 guards fired stun blasters. Cale moved between the beams with impossible precision, as if he'd known exactly where they would aim. He closed the distance in 3 strides, disarmed both with a twisting motion that left their wrists sprained, and knocked their heads together with a sickening crack. 31 seconds. The remaining guards hesitated, suddenly uncertain. The commander, no longer amused, barked orders. Use lethal force, now! 3 guards deployed riot shields and advanced in formation. Cale waited until they were close, then stomped his foot with precise force against a maintenance panel on the platform floor. The panel popped upward, disrupting their formation. In the moment of confusion, Cale slipped between them, struck nerve clusters through gaps in their armor, and left them paralyzed. 20 seconds. The last guard tried to flee. Cale grabbed a fallen stun baton, calculated its weight in an instant, and threw it with surgical precision. It struck the guard's legs, tangling them and sending him headfirst into an open waste disposal chute. The hatch sealed automatically behind him. 10 seconds to spare, Cale announced, turning to face the commander. The plaza had fallen into stunned silence. 12 elite Imperial guards lay defeated or trapped. Cale stood unruffled, not even breathing hard, his posture relaxed yet somehow more threatening than any combat stance. The commander's hand trembled as he reached for his ceremonial sidearm. "I wouldn't," Cale advised quietly. "A deal's a deal." His gaze shifted to Selen Nora, still bound to the pole. Their eyes met, violet against dark brown, and something electric passed between them. Not recognition, exactly, but a shared defiance that transcended species. The commander, calculating his options, found none acceptable. With the eyes of the entire station upon him, backing down would mean losing face, potentially his position. Fighting would mean certain defeat. His training selected the least damaging option. "Release her," he ordered through clenched teeth. "The Empire honors its wagers." Guards who could still stand hurried to unbind Selen. She rubbed her wrists, watching Cale with open curiosity. "This isn't over," the commander hissed at Cale. "No one humiliates the Empire." Cale shrugged. "You managed that without my help." He turned away, glancing at his chronometer once more. Walking back through the crowd, which parted before him like a superstitious sea, he returned to the bar. His coffee mug still sat on the counter. He picked it up, took a sip, and nodded with satisfaction. "Still hot," he remarked to no one in particular. The door chimed as someone entered. Cale didn't need to look up to know it was Selen Nora. Her footsteps, lighter than a human's with the distinct rhythm of his Lanian gait, approached the counter. "Why?" she asked. One word, direct and demanding. Cale finally looked at her. Up close, her features were striking, high cheekbones, eyes tilted slightly upward at the outer corners, violet skin that seemed to absorb and refract light simultaneously. A small bioluminescent pattern traced her temple, pulsing with her heartbeat. "Bar's closed," he replied. "You owe me an explanation." Her voice carried the musical undertones common to her species, but with a hardness that suggested years of fighting to be taken seriously. "I owe you nothing," Cale resumed, wiping glasses. "You're free. Go." "To where?" She spread her hands. "I'm marked now. The Empire never forgets a humiliation." Her eyes narrowed. "Neither do I." and what I just witnessed was impossible. Kale set down the glass harder than necessary. Nothing's impossible, just improbable. 12 elite guards in 49 seconds? Selin crossed her arms. With no weapons, no exertion, and she nodded toward his mug. Without spilling your coffee? The corner of Kale's mouth twitched. I've had practice. No one has that much practice. Then maybe I'm just lucky. He reached under the counter and produced a bottle of iridescent blue liquid, rare Islanian spirits. Drink? You look like you could use one. How did you? She stopped herself. That's high-grade Tuyan, from my home world. It's been embargoed since the occupation. Kale poured a measure into a clean glass. I know a guy who knows a guy. You know a lot of things, don't you? Selin didn't touch the drink. Like exactly where to strike Imperial armor to disable it. Like how to move between blaster beams. Like when someone should stop asking questions if they want to stay alive, Kale interrupted, his voice dangerously soft. Sirens wailed outside. Through the window they could see Imperial reinforcements flooding the plaza, scanning faces, checking identifications. They're looking for both of us now, Selin stated. Yes. My recommendation? She finally picked up the glass of Tuyan, swirling it thoughtfully. We should disappear. Immediately. Kale studied her for a long moment. 3 years of careful anonymity destroyed in 54 seconds of impulsive action. All because something in this woman's defiance had sparked something he thought long dead. There's a maintenance shaft behind the kitchen, he said finally. Leads to the lower levels. We can access docking bay 7 from there. I have a ship. Of course you do. She downed the Tuyan in one practiced motion. Lead the way, mister. Reiner. Kale Reiner. That's not your real name, she stated with certainty. He almost smiled. Today, it is. Kale reached beneath the counter again, this time retrieving a compact pulse weapon and a small bag that clinked with the sound of credit chips. With practiced efficiency, he disabled the bar's security system and led the way toward the kitchen. As they slipped into the maintenance shaft, Selin asked, why risk everything for a stranger, especially an alien condemned for loving one of your kind? Kale sealed the hatch behind them before answering. Maybe I hate watching the strong prey on the weak, he said, voice echoing in the narrow passage. Or maybe I just needed an excuse to stop pretending I'm nothing but a barkeep. And what are you, really? She pressed. In the dim emergency lighting of the shaft, his eyes seemed to reflect something dangerous and ancient. Let's hope you never find out. The abandoned monitoring station hung in geosynchronous orbit above Calyx 9's largest moon, a forgotten relic from before the Imperial occupation. Solar panels, half covered in space dust, still generated enough power to maintain basic life support. The station resembled a mechanical insect, angular, practical, with sensors like dormant eyes facing the vast emptiness of space. Kale sealed the airlock behind them, his movements efficient and practiced. The station's interior illuminated automatically as they entered, emergency lighting casting everything in a harsh blue glow. Selin examined the cramped living quarters with scientific curiosity. Impressive. This station doesn't appear on any Imperial charts. That's the point, Kale replied, securing their small vessel in the docking clamp. Pre-war monitoring post. Empire thinks it was destroyed during the Calyx annexation. But you knew better. She ran her fingers along a dust-covered console, leaving perfect violet trails. Kale activated a series of switches, bringing dormant systems back online. Screens flickered to life, displaying security feeds of empty corridors and the external hull. I know a lot of things. He tossed her a ration pack from a hidden compartment. Hungry? Selin caught it one-handed. You've prepared for this. A bolt hole ready with supplies. She studied him intently, the bioluminescent markings on her temple pulsing faster. This isn't just convenient timing. You've been planning an escape. Kale shrugged, the gesture deliberately casual. I like options. Options, she repeated, opening the ration pack. Like saving an Islanian scientist from public execution? That was improvisation. Selen's violet eyes narrowed. You don't strike me as the impulsive type. Shows what you know. Kale busied himself with calibrating the station's cloaking system, his back to her. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft hum of ancient machinery. Finally, Selen spoke, her voice measured and precise. You're not a hero. Kale's hands stilled momentarily before resuming their work. Never claimed to be. Then what are you? Because you're certainly not just a barkeep from Calyx 9. He turned to face her, leaning against the console. His expression remained carefully neutral, but something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. And you're not just a pretty alien girl on a pole. Selen's bioluminescent patterns flared with indignation. I was a scientist, she replied, spine straightening with dignity. A xenobiologist specializing in cross-species compatibility. Practical research? Kale asked with a half-smile. Her jaw tightened. My work was groundbreaking before the Empire classified it as degenerate. I developed protocols for genetic bridging between compatible sentient species. And fell for your human test subject? The accusation struck precisely where intended. Selen's violet skin darkened around her cheeks. Merrick was a colleague, not a test subject. He understood the importance of my work. Her voice hardened. Before he betrayed me to the authorities to save his own skin. Kale's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Empire got to him? They offered him a position in their eugenics division in exchange for reporting our relationship. Apparently my contamination was acceptable as long as it served imperial interests. Bitterness edged her words. He chose advancement over... She cut herself off. Over love, Kale suggested, watching her reaction carefully. Over integrity, she corrected. I didn't expect loyalty to me, but I expected loyalty to the science. She glanced away. Your turn. What's your story? Kale reached for a maintenance panel, removing it to reveal complex wiring. I once wanted to be a clown. His lips quirked. Juggling, bad jokes, making kids laugh. Based on how my life turned out, I'd say I succeeded. You're deflecting. I'm surviving. He stripped a wire with practiced precision. Same as you. Selen moved closer, invading his space deliberately. Those guards at the purification ceremony, you didn't just defeat them, you humiliated them, like you wanted the Empire to notice. Kale's hands never faltered, even as her proximity sent an unexpected charge through his nervous system. Maybe I just don't like bullies. Or maybe you wanted them to send more. She tilted her head, studying him like a particularly fascinating specimen. Maybe you've been hiding, waiting for the right moment to... To what? He interrupted, his voice dangerously soft. Start a one-man rebellion? Overthrow the Empire with sarcasm and bar tricks? I don't know yet, she admitted, but I intend to find out. Kale stepped away, creating distance between them. Focus on staying alive. The Empire won't stop hunting you. Us, she corrected. They're hunting us now. He didn't argue. Days passed in tense coexistence. The station's limited space forced constant proximity, yet Kale maintained emotional distance with practiced skill. They established a routine of sorts, taking turns monitoring communications, searching for Imperial patrol patterns, rationing supplies. Selen observed him constantly, cataloging anomalies like the scientist she was. Kale accessed the station's systems without manuals or hesitation, inputting complex command sequences from memory. When she questioned him about a particularly obscure override protocol, he claimed he'd picked it up somewhere. From where? She pressed. This is classified military code from before the Imperial standardization. I read it in a bathroom stall, he replied, without looking up from the console. During her designated rest periods, she noticed Kale never truly slept. He would sit motionless in the monitoring room, eyes closed, breathing shallow, but at the slightest noise he was instantly alert, fully functional without the disorientation of interrupted sleep. On the fifth day, the station's power fluctuated. An ancient generator in the lower maintenance bay threatened to fail. When Selin reached the bay, she found Kale already there assessing the massive machinery. Main couplings deteriorated, he explained, pointing to a corroded joint where coolant leaked in a steady drip. Need to replace it before... A metallic groan interrupted him. The overhead support beam shifted as the generator vibrated more violently. The massive metal cylinder began to tilt, breaking free from its moorings. "Move!" Kale shouted, pushing Selin aside as the generator collapsed. It happened too quickly for evasion. The 3-ton generator crashed down, directly onto Kale's outstretched arm. Selin screamed, expecting to see him crushed. Instead, Kale stood unmoved, one hand supporting the entire weight of the generator. No strain showed on his face, no trembling in his muscles. With deliberate calm, he pushed the generator back into position and secured it with his free hand. The silence afterward hung heavy between them. "That's not physically possible," Selin finally said, her scientific mind rejecting what her eyes had witnessed. Kale avoided her gaze. "Adrenaline." "No," she countered, stepping closer. "Not even with adrenaline. The human skeletal structure would shatter under that weight." "Maybe I drink my milk," he deflected, already turning to leave. Selin caught his arm. "Who are you?" His eyes met hers, and for a moment, something raw and haunted flickered across his features. Then his mask slipped back into place. "Someone you should stay away from." That night, Selin found Kale in the station's observation dome, a small, transparent bubble offering an unobstructed view of space. He sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the distant stars. "I accessed the station's archives," she said without preamble. "Found something interesting." Kale didn't look at her. "Breaking into classified systems? How rebellious." "Says the man with impossible strength who's hiding from the Empire." She activated her portable data screen. "Project EOS. Mean anything to you?" His posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Should it?" "Imperial Black Ops program. Highly classified. Something about enhanced soldiers." She swiped through fragmented documents. Most data was purged, but there are references to a prototype that went rogue, disappeared completely. Her eyes lifted to his profile. 3 years ago. Kale remained silent, his face illuminated by the glow of distant stars. "That's when you showed up on Calyx 9, isn't it?" she pressed. 3 years ago. With no background, no history. Just another human drifting through Imperial space. "Your point?" "My point is..." She moved to stand directly in his line of sight. "You're running from something much bigger than a bar tab." He finally met her gaze. "We're all running from something, Doctor. Some just run farther than others." "I'm not running anymore," she declared. "The Empire took everything from me. My research, my reputation, my freedom. So what's your plan? Revenge?" "Understanding," she corrected. "I want to understand what they fear so much that they'd execute someone for loving across species lines." "They fear what they can't control," Kale replied, rising to his feet in a single fluid motion. "Connections that transcend their neat categories. Bonds they didn't authorize." He stood close enough that Selin could feel the heat radiating from his body. Something electric passed between them, a tension neither acknowledged but both felt with increasing intensity. "Is that why you saved me?" she asked, her voice softer. "Some philosophical objection to Imperial control?" "Maybe I just liked how you stood there," he admitted. "Defiant, unbroken, even when they'd taken everything." The station's gravity suddenly fluctuated, a scheduled power conservation measure in the observation dome. Their bodies lightened, feet barely touching the floor. Selin steadied herself against his chest, her violet fingers contrasting sharply against his dark shirt. "And now?" she whispered. "What happens now?" Kale's hand rose to her face, tracing the luminescent patterns at her temple. They brightened at his touch, responding to her quickening pulse. "Now," he murmured, "we make another mistake the Empire won't forgive." Their lips met as they drifted in the reduced gravity, bodies rotating slowly beneath the canopy of stars. His kiss was controlled at first, measured, then hungry, as though some long dormant part of him had awakened. Selen's telepathic abilities, heightened by physical contact, sensed the storm beneath his calm exterior: rage, desire, and something deeper she couldn't name. Her hands moved across the muscles of his back, feeling their impossible density. Not human, not entirely. The realization should have frightened her, but instead ignited something primal within her. The station's alert system shattered the moment, harsh red lights pulsing as warning klaxons blared. "Proximity alert," Kale stated, instantly alert despite the interruption. "Imperial patrol." They hurried to the control room, gravity normalizing as they left the observation dome. Security screens showed an Imperial cruiser approaching the station's coordinates. "Have they detected us?" Selen asked, breathless from more than just the run. Kale's fingers flew across the controls. "Cloaking still operational. They're doing a standard sweep." He frowned at a secondary alert. "But they've deployed hunter-seeker drones, more thorough than usual." "They're looking for us specifically," Selen realized. "The incident at the ceremony has made us priority targets." Kale nodded grimly. "They won't stop until they find us." The scanner beeped, highlighting a small object approaching. "Drone," Kale confirmed. "Advanced model, designed to detect life signs through shielding." "Can we evade it?" "No." His expression hardened into something cold and calculating. "But we can mislead it." Selen watched as he accessed weapons systems she hadn't known existed. "What are you planning? Creating a diversion?" His fingers never slowed. "They want a high-value target? I'll give them one." On the tactical display, the Imperial cruiser's position blinked ominously. The hunter-seeker drone moved closer, its sensors probing the station's cloaking field. "Get to the escape pod," Kale ordered. "Coordinates are already set for a safe location." "I'm not leaving you," Selen protested. "Yes, you are." He finally looked up, his eyes reflecting the red warning lights. "Because one of us needs to survive to tell the truth." Before she could argue further, the drone breached the station's outer perimeter. Simultaneously, the Imperial cruiser changed course, accelerating toward them. "They found us," she whispered. "No," Kale corrected, drawing a weapon she hadn't seen before. "They found me." He grabbed a protein bar from their supplies, taking a casual bite as he checked his weapon. "Wait here," he instructed. "This won't take long." The hunter-seeker drone breached the airlock, its metallic body reconfiguring into combat mode. Behind it came 4 Imperial commandos in full tactical gear, the elite of the elite. Kale chewed thoughtfully. "Gentlemen," he greeted them, still holding his half-eaten snack. "You're just in time for lunch." "Target confirmed," announced the lead commando. "Project EOS prototype. You are ordered to surrender for decommissioning." Selen gasped from her hiding place. The confirmation of her suspicions hit her like a physical blow. Kale sighed dramatically. "Hold this a second," he said, tossing the protein bar in the air. Before it could fall, he had disarmed the first commando, used the man's weapon to disable the drone, and knocked 2 others unconscious with precise strikes to neural junctions in their armor. The protein bar was still falling when he caught it and took another bite. "Actually," he told the remaining terrified commando, "I'm not very hungry after all." He knocked the man out with a casual flick to the forehead. Selen emerged slowly, staring at the 4 elite soldiers neutralized in seconds. "You're him," she whispered. "The EOS prototype. The perfect weapon that developed a conscience." Kale's expression revealed nothing. Perfect is a strong word. Above them, the security monitor showed the Imperial cruiser moving into firing position. They had minutes at most before the station would be destroyed. "The escape pod, now," Kale insisted, grabbing her hand. As they raced through the corridor, the station's security cameras continued recording. The last operational feed transmitted automatically to the nearest relay station, capturing images of a barkeep who moved like no human should, defeating Imperial forces while barely exerting himself. By morning, the footage would spread across the galactic net, captioned with a question that would ignite speculation throughout occupied space. Who is this man? The escape pod tumbled through space, its emergency thrusters firing sporadically to stabilize their trajectory. Behind them, the monitoring station erupted in a brilliant flash as Imperial torpedoes found their mark, scattering debris across the black void. Inside the cramped pod, illuminated only by emergency lighting, Sellen and Kale sat in stunned silence. The violent destruction of their temporary sanctuary had left them both shaken, but alive. Sellen's luminescent patterns pulsed erratically, reflecting her racing thoughts. "They were waiting for you," she finally said. "Not me, you." Kale didn't answer immediately. He checked the pod's navigation system with mechanical precision, his movements controlled despite the chaos they'd narrowly escaped. "Project EOS," she continued, watching his face for reaction. "That's what they called you, the perfect weapon that developed a conscience." His jaw tightened. "There's nothing perfect about me. You defeated 4 elite commandos without breaking a sweat. You held up a 3-ton generator with one hand." She leaned closer. "What are you?" Kale's dark eyes met hers. For once, his carefully constructed facade had cracked, revealing something ancient and weary beneath. "A mistake," he answered simply. The pod's systems beeped, indicating they'd cleared the immediate danger zone. Kale programmed a series of random jumps to confuse any potential pursuit before setting their final destination. "We have 6 hours until we reach the rendezvous coordinates," he stated, deliberately changing the subject. "You should rest." "And you?" Sellen asked. "Do you even need sleep?" A humorless smile touched his lips. "Not much. One of many improvements. Tell me." She moved to sit beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I'm a scientist, remember? I deserve to know what I'm risking my life for." Kale remained silent for so long she thought he would refuse. Then, surprisingly, he began to speak. "Project EOS, Enhanced Operational Soldier, the Empire's attempt to create the perfect weapon." His voice was flat, clinical. "Take a human template, enhance cellular regeneration, augment muscle density, optimize neural processing." He tapped his temple. "Install tactical databases directly into the cerebral cortex." "You're talking about complete physiological restructuring," Sellen whispered, professional fascination momentarily overriding her fear. "That's theoretical at best. The neural integration alone would kill most subjects." It did. Kale's expression darkened. 98% failure rate. The successes were unstable, prone to psychological breaks, neural degradation. He flexed his fingers, studying them as though they belonged to someone else. "I was the prototype. First of the 3rd-generation models, the one they got right, technically speaking. But you escaped." "I malfunctioned," he corrected her. "Developed anomalous responses outside programmed parameters, empathy, doubt, conscience." His mouth twisted into something not quite a smile. "Emotions weren't part of the design specifications." Sellen's fingers tentatively touched his hand. "What happened?" "Final field test." His voice became distant, remembering. "Colony world marked for pacification after refusing Imperial taxation. My unit was deployed to make an example. Standard procedure: eliminate leadership, infrastructure, then enough of the population to ensure compliance." He fell silent, the memory visibly weighing on him. "There was a child," he finally continued. "A girl. She was hiding while I eliminated a resistance cell. Should have neutralized her, potential future insurgent according to protocol. But she looked at me and he shook his head. She wasn't afraid, just sad, asked why I was hurting people. Selen's bioluminescence dimmed in sympathy. And something changed. Everything changed. Kale's fist clenched. I saw myself through her eyes, not a soldier following orders, but a monster creating suffering. I aborted the mission, destroyed the command ship, disappeared. How long ago? 3 years, 2 months, 18 days. His precision was unsettling. I've been hiding since then, taking insignificant jobs, becoming forgettable until your execution. Why break cover for me? Selen asked, the question that had haunted her since the plaza. Why risk everything? Kale turned to face her fully. Because you reminded me of that child, not afraid when you should be, standing tall when they wanted you broken. His voice softened. But mostly because I'm tired of watching the Empire destroy anything that doesn't fit their vision of perfection. For the first time since they'd met, Selen saw beyond his defenses, to the man, not the weapon. Her telepathic abilities, heightened by proximity, sensed his internal struggle, the programmed killer battling the emergent soul. Without conscious thought, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. Kale froze, caught off guard by the unexpected intimacy. Then his arms enfolded her, his enhanced strength carefully restrained as he pulled her closer. The kiss deepened, transforming from tentative to hungry in seconds. Selen's telepathic senses flared open, creating a connection beyond physical touch. She gasped as his emotions flooded her consciousness. Loneliness so profound it had become a constant ache, rage carefully contained behind mental walls, and beneath it all, a desperate yearning for connection he'd never allowed himself to acknowledge. "I can feel you," she whispered against his mouth. "Everything you hide, everything you fear." His body tensed. "You shouldn't be in there." "Let me," she urged, her violet fingers tracing the contours of his face. "Let someone see you. Just once." Something crumbled in his resistance. The escape pod's cramped quarters became their universe as clothing was discarded with urgent need. In the dim emergency lighting, their bodies moved together, his impossibly strong, hers lithely graceful. Selen's telepathic abilities transformed their physical union into something transcendent. Each touch resonated through their mental connection, creating feedback loops of pleasure and emotion. For Kale, who had spent years numbing himself to feeling, the intensity was overwhelming. "I can't," he gasped, his control slipping. "You can," she assured him, guiding his hands to the sensitive bioluminescent patterns along her spine. "Feel everything." As they moved together, Selen's markings brightened to an almost blinding intensity, casting their joined silhouettes against the pod's metal walls. The barriers between them, species, history, purpose, dissolved in the primal rhythm of their connection. For the first time since his escape, Kale surrendered completely, not to the programming that made him a weapon, but to the humanity he'd fought to protect. In Selen's arms, he found temporary absolution for the destruction he'd caused, the lives he'd taken. Later, as they lay entwined in the afterglow, Selen traced lazy patterns on his chest. "The Empire will never stop hunting you," she murmured. "Or you," he added. "Your crime is worse than mine in their eyes. I merely disobeyed. You dared to love outside their boundaries." "Is that what this is?" she asked, suddenly vulnerable. "Love?" Kale considered the unfamiliar concept. "I don't know. I've never—" He paused. "It's not in my programming." Selen smiled sadly. "It wasn't in mine either, but here we are." The navigation system chimed, announcing their approach to the coordinates Kale had entered. They dressed quickly, reality intruding on their brief respite. "Where are we going?" Selen asked, noting their trajectory toward a small moon. "Underground resistance cell," Kale explained. "They can get you fake identification, passage to the outer rim, somewhere beyond Imperial reach." "And you?" His expression hardened. "I have unfinished business with the Empire." Before she could respond, Proximity alarms blared. A massive Imperial dreadnought materialized directly in their path, its weapons systems locking onto their tiny vessel. "Impossible," Kale muttered, checking the scanners. "I charted random jumps. They couldn't have tracked us." The pod's communication system activated without their input. A stern Imperial voice filled the cabin. "Attention fugitives. Your vessel is surrounded. The female terrorist Selen Nora is to be surrendered immediately for ritual cleansing. Resistance will result in immediate termination." Kale's expression became coldly calculating. "They're bluffing. They want me alive for study." A focused tractor beam engulfed the pod, pulling them inexorably toward the dreadnought's hangar bay. "Options?" Selen asked, fear evident in her voice despite her attempt at bravery. Kale assessed their situation with enhanced tactical processing. "Limited. Once we're aboard, they'll separate us. Take you for the memory wipe ceremony. Take me for decommissioning." "Can you fight them all?" "Yes," he said without hesitation or bravado, "but not while protecting you simultaneously." The pod shuddered as it passed through the dreadnought's shields. Selen grabbed his hand. "Then don't try to protect me. Let them take me for the ceremony." "Absolutely not." "Listen," she insisted, her scientist's mind formulating a strategy. "The ritual cleansing is transmitted galaxy-wide as propaganda. It's their vulnerability, a public spectacle." Understanding dawned in Kale's eyes. A stage. Exactly. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed with determination. "Let them take me. Follow discreetly. When they're broadcasting to the entire Empire, we show them exactly what they created," he finished, a dangerous smile spreading across his face. "It's suicide." "Probably," she agreed, "but it might be worth it." The pod clanged against the hangar floor as the tractor beam released them. Imperial troops surrounded the small vessel, weapons trained on the airlock. Kale pulled Selen close one last time. "If we survive this," he whispered against her violet skin, "I want to learn about that love thing properly." She smiled despite their dire situation. "Deal." The Imperial flagship, Inevitable Justice, hovered in low orbit above Nexus Prime, the Empire's showcase world. Its massive shadow fell across the capital city like an artificial eclipse, a deliberate reminder of Imperial might. In the flagship's detention level, Kale sat motionless in a reinforced cell designed specifically to contain him. Neural dampeners hummed in the walls, theoretically suppressing his enhanced capabilities. 6 armed guards stood outside, nervously fingering their weapons. They had separated him from Selen immediately upon capture, as predicted. Now he waited, eyes closed, conserving energy while his augmented mind calculated possible escape routes, combat scenarios, and survival probabilities. The numbers weren't encouraging. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Attention all personnel. The ritual cleansing of the terrorist Selen Nora will commence in 15 minutes. Mandatory viewing on all Imperial channels." Kale's eyes snapped open. 15 minutes to implement their desperate plan. He flexed against his restraints experimentally. The specialized bonds held, designed by engineers familiar with his capabilities. But they had made one critical miscalculation. They had calibrated the restraints for his recorded strength levels from 3 years ago. He had grown stronger in exile. With a controlled surge of effort, Kale shattered the bonds. Alarms blared instantly as sensors detected the breach. The guards outside raised their weapons just as the cell door exploded outward. What followed would later be described in hushed whispers throughout the Empire. One guard who survived would claim Kale moved like death-given form. Another would never speak again. On the ceremonial deck, Selen stood bound to a neural recalibration device. Around her, Imperial officials and media representatives gathered for the spectacle. Her violet skin appeared ashen under the harsh lights, but her eyes remained defiant. The Imperial Inquisitor, resplendent in ceremonial armor, addressed the galaxy-wide broadcast. "Citizens of the Empire, witness justice administered to this deviant who dared violate our genetic purity laws." Billions of screens across thousands of worlds displayed Selen's face as the Inquisitor continued his speech about Imperial values and the dangers of contamination. "Begin the cleansing," he finally ordered. Technicians activated the neural device. Pain lanced through Selen's body as the machine began systematically erasing her memories, her personality, everything that made her unique. She screamed, not from pain, but as a signal. The massive doors to the ceremonial deck exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris stepped Kale, his expression utterly calm despite the carnage he'd left in his wake. Blood spattered his clothing, none of it his own. The Inquisitor recovered first, drawing his ceremonial weapon. "Project EOS. Your malfunction has gone on long enough." Kale moved with blinding speed, disarming the Inquisitor and lifting him by the throat in one fluid motion. "Keep broadcasting," he instructed the petrified media technicians. "The Empire should see what they created." He turned to face the cameras directly, still holding the struggling Inquisitor. "Citizens of the Empire, I am Project EOS, the perfect weapon your taxes funded. Designed to kill without question, to destroy entire civilizations on command." His voice carried to every corner of Imperial space. "But I developed a flaw. I started to care about the lives I was taking." While speaking, he moved methodically towards Selen, incapacitating anyone who attempted to interfere with surgical precision. When he reached the neural device, he crushed its control panel with one hand, stopping the memory wipe process. "The Empire fears what it cannot control," he continued, freeing Selen from her restraints. "They fear love that transcends their boundaries. They fear weapons that develop conscience. They fear you, all of you, finding your own voice." The ship's security protocols activated, sealing the ceremonial deck. Automated defense turrets emerged from hidden compartments. Kale supported Selen, who struggled to stand after the partial memory wipe. "We need to move," he urged. "Can you walk?" She nodded weakly. "Not far." The ship shuddered as internal explosions rocked its structure, security measures designed to contain breaches by destroying compromised sections. "They're scuttling this part of the ship," Kale realized, "with us in it." He guided Selen toward the observation deck, the only section with potential escape pods. More troops attempted to intercept them. All fell before Kale's enhanced abilities. They reached the observation platform as explosions consumed the levels below them. Through the massive viewport, they could see the planet's surface 300 meters below. "No escape pods," Selen noted, her voice faint from the partial procedure. "No." Kale assessed their options with cold precision. "One possibility remains." She understood immediately. "We jump." "I jump," he corrected. "Holding you. My body can withstand the impact. Mostly." Selen touched his face gently. "You might not survive." "I was never meant to survive this long anyway." He pulled her close. "I was their fear, their perfect weapon. But you," his voice softened, "you became my reason." Security forces breached the observation deck's secondary entrance. Plasma rounds sizzled past them as Kale shielded Selen with his body. With one powerful strike, he shattered the reinforced viewport. Atmosphere vented explosively, pulling them toward the opening. Kale held Selen tightly against his chest as they plummeted through open air. The wind screamed around them as they fell, the planet's surface rushing toward them with lethal speed. "I can be their fear," Kale whispered against her skin. "But you are my meaning." He rotated mid-fall, positioning his body beneath hers to absorb the impact. His enhanced physiology prepared for maximum cellular damage as he calculated the precise angle needed to protect her vital organs. They struck the ground with catastrophic force. Concrete shattered around them, creating a crater 6 meters wide. Dust billowed upward, temporarily obscuring the impact site from Imperial forces who scrambled to the location. When the dust settled, they found Selen cradled in Kale's arms. His body had absorbed the devastating impact, leaving her bruised but alive. Kale himself lay broken, blood seeping from multiple wounds, his enhanced healing struggling to repair the massive trauma. As Imperial troops surrounded the crater, weapons trained on the fallen pair, Selen kissed Kale's bloodied lips one last time. "Worth it," he whispered through damaged lungs. The troops hesitated, witnessing the moment of tenderness between human and alien. Their camera feeds continued broadcasting across the Empire, no longer an exhibition of imperial justice but a testament to defiance and sacrifice. And throughout occupied space, something stirred in response. A question, a spark, a possibility. If the Empire's perfect weapon could choose love over obedience, what choice might ordinary citizens make? The twin suns of Lyra IV cast golden light across the valley, illuminating fields of silver-blue grass that rippled like water in the gentle breeze. Nestled against the foothills, a modest dwelling blended with the natural landscape, its organic architecture incorporating living plants and locally sourced materials. On the wide front porch, Selen cradled a tiny bundle wrapped in soft fabric. The infant's skin shimmered with faint violet undertones, while his eyes, unmistakably human in structure, glowed with subtle luminescence when he blinked. "He's hungry again," she called over her shoulder. "Third time this morning." Kale emerged from inside, carrying a specially formulated bottle. His movements retained their fluid precision, though he now walked with a barely perceptible limp, a permanent reminder of their 300-meter fall 1 year ago. "Enhanced metabolism," he noted, handing her the bottle. "Takes after his father." Selen's bioluminescent patterns brightened with amusement. "Let's hope that's all he inherits from you. One unstoppable force in the family is enough." Kale settled beside them on the bench, his arm automatically extending around Selen's shoulders. Despite the peaceful setting, his gaze continuously swept the perimeter, old habits hardwired into his neural pathways. The galaxy had transformed in the year since their fall. The footage of their defiance, a perfect weapon choosing love over programming, an alien scientist maintaining dignity in the face of forced cleansing, had spread uncontrollably across Imperial networks. What began as isolated protests evolved into coordinated resistance as citizens questioned the regime's fundamental principles for the first time in generations. Selen had recovered from the partial memory wipe, though certain periods remained hazy. After their miraculous survival, underground resistance cells had smuggled them off-world while Imperial forces combed the crash site. The Empire, unwilling to admit their failure, officially declared both fugitives dead, while privately dedicating enormous resources to hunting them. "Transmission from Nexus Prime," Kale mentioned casually, accessing the news feed through his neural implant. "3 more systems have joined the coalition." Selen smiled, adjusting the infant as he drank eagerly. "Tuyan will be pleased. She's been negotiating with their representatives for months." Tuyan, Selen's former research assistant who had emerged as a charismatic diplomat, now served as the public face of the Coalition for Galactic Autonomy. With Selen providing strategic direction from hiding, the movement had grown from scattered resistance cells into a legitimate political force challenging Imperial hegemony. "Any word from Jax?" Selen asked. "Running supplies to the Calyx sector. Says Imperial presence is down 60% since the regional governor defected." A rare smile crossed Kale's face. "Also says our old bar is now Coalition headquarters for that quadrant. From Watering Hole to Revolution Central." Selen laughed softly. "Fitting." The baby finished feeding and squirmed in her arms. Kale reached for him, his massive hands enveloping the tiny form with surprising gentleness. "Come here, Ray," he murmured, lifting the child to his shoulder. Selen watched them, marveling at the contradiction embodied in her partner, the deadliest weapon ever created by the Empire, now patiently patting their son's back with calculated pressure calibrated precisely for an infant's delicate frame. "Why that name?" she asked, not for the first time. "You never fully explained." Kale considered, his expression softening as Ray grasped his finger with a tiny fist. In ancient human language, it means king, but that's not why. He paused, searching for words. Emotional vocabulary still sometimes eluded him. It also means ray, as in light. He was the light I couldn't understand, couldn't predict, a possibility I never calculated. The infant cooed, his luminescent eyes blinking contentedly. Inside their home, an alert chimed, proximity sensors detecting movement along the western perimeter. "Stay here," Kale instructed, handing Ray back to Selen. His posture shifted subtly as combat protocols automatically engaged. "Is it them?" Selen asked, tension evident in her brightening bioluminescence. Kale accessed the security feed through his neural link. Single operative, Imperial intelligence insignia, stealth approach. Despite the danger, Selen smiled. "They never learn, do they?" "They can't," Kale replied, moving toward the door. "Learning would require acknowledging failure." Ray began fussing, perhaps sensing the shift in his parents' demeanor. Kale paused, returning to touch his son's cheek with unexpected tenderness. "I'll handle this," he promised. "Keep playing with him." Selen nodded, lifting a small toy engineered to stimulate both human and Aslanian neural development patterns. As she engaged Ray's attention, Kale slipped outside, his movements shifting to predatory efficiency. The Imperial operative had advanced to within 50 meters of the dwelling, close enough for a precision strike but far enough to retreat if detected. Dressed in terrain-adaptive camouflage, the agent meticulously documented the homestead's layout with advanced surveillance equipment. Kale approached from behind, his footsteps soundless despite his size. 3 years as a barkeep had taught him something his Imperial programmers never could: the art of appearing utterly harmless until the moment he chose not to be. "Imperial intelligence is recruiting poorly these days," he commented casually. The operative spun, weapon raised, only to find it suddenly missing from his grip. Kale stood examining the device with clinical interest, having moved faster than human perception could track. "Molecular destabilizer," Kale noted, turning the weapon over. "Expensive, messy, inefficient." He crushed it with one hand, the components crumbling to dust between his fingers. Like the Empire itself. Terror paralyzed the operative momentarily before training reasserted itself. He reached for a secondary weapon, but Kale's hand closed around his wrist with precisely calculated pressure, enough to immobilize without crushing bone. "I could kill you 17 different ways without moving from this spot," Kale stated matter-of-factly. "But I won't." Confusion replaced fear in the operative's eyes. "Instead," Kale continued, "you'll return to your handlers with a message." He released the operative's wrist. "The Empire created me to be the perfect weapon, incapable of hesitation, remorse, or mercy. They succeeded." His voice hardened. "Remember that when they send you hunting my family." From the porch, Selen called, "Kale, Ray wants his father." Without taking his eyes off the operative, Kale replied, "Coming." Then, leaning closer to the terrified agent, he added, "I'd run now. She gets irritable when I'm late for parenting duties." The operative stumbled backward, then turned and fled toward the concealed transport beyond the valley's edge. Kale returned to the porch where Selen waited with Ray balanced on her hip. The infant reached for him, tiny fingers grasping air excitedly. "Problems?" Selen asked, passing their son to his father. "Nothing significant," Kale answered, settling Ray in the crook of his arm. "Just sending a message." Ray's small hands patted Kale's chest, drawn to the subtle glow of the reinforced implants beneath his skin. The child giggled as his own bioluminescence brightened in response. "I received the updated genetic analysis," Selen mentioned, slipping naturally into scientist mode. "His cellular structure is fascinating. Human durability with Aslanian neural plasticity. His telepathic potential is already registering on advanced scales." "Meaning?" She smiled, both proud and slightly concerned. "Meaning he'll likely be stronger than either of us individually. the first true hybrid of our species, what the Empire feared most. Kale considered this as Ray grasped his finger with surprising strength for a 1-month-old. Then we'll need to teach him what took me years to discover, which is. A small maintenance drone hovered nearby, struggling with repairs to the dwelling's roof. Without warning, it malfunctioned, plummeting directly toward them. Kale's free hand shot out, catching the drone effortlessly, while his other arm kept Ray securely cradled. That strength without purpose is just destruction, he explained, setting the drone gently on the porch rail. That power means nothing without something to protect. Ray watched the drone with curious eyes, his small hand reaching toward it in fascination. He needs to understand what the Empire never could, Kale continued, that the greatest strength isn't in domination, but in choice, in protecting instead of destroying. Selen's fingers intertwined with his, her telepathic abilities sensing the emotion behind his words. He has the perfect teacher. The small family stood together on the porch as afternoon light bathed the valley in golden warmth. To any distant observer, they might appear ordinary, just another family enjoying a peaceful moment on a remote world. But in that ordinary scene lay the Empire's greatest fear, different species united not by force or decree, but by choice, by love. The living embodiment of everything their rigid hierarchy sought to prevent, connection that transcended boundaries, strength guided by compassion, difference celebrated rather than cleansed. Ray yawned, his luminescent eyes blinking sleepily as he nestled against his father's chest. As if responding to unspoken thoughts, Kale murmured to his son. "See, Ray," he said softly, his gaze sweeping from the baby to Selen and across their hard-won sanctuary. "Real strength isn't about destroying. It's about protecting what you love." As the infant drifted to sleep, his small hand still wrapped around his father's finger, something unprecedented happened. Kale's enhanced tactical systems, always calculating threats and survival probabilities, temporarily suspended operation. For perhaps the first time since his creation, the perfect weapon the Empire had designed experienced a moment of perfect peace. In the distance, beyond the valley, the first stars of evening appeared in the darkening sky, new constellations in a galaxy being reborn.